Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends, and today I have a quick book review to give to you for the book series, The School of Good and Evil by Soman Chainani. I'm really hoping I'm saying that name right. This is honestly a fantastic series. I love it. There are some things to say, both good and bad about, but honestly, by the time that you get to the end of this book, if you're like me, you are going to love this adventure that you've gone on. The School for Good and Evil is a series about two girls who are taken from the world of the readers, a world very much like ours where there are no fantasies. There's nothing magical, nothing strange, it's just life. They are taken, however, from their normal world and thrown into the world of fairy tales to learn to be heroes and villains. And our two main heroes here are Agatha and Sophie. Agatha is the creepy girl who lives in the graveyard. So maybe this world is a little bit strange. In any case, you got Agatha, who is the creepy girl who everyone sees as the villain. And then you have Sophie, the butcher's daughter, who is just absolutely gorgeous, who lives as though she's already a part of high society and living the high life. She believes that she will one day become a gorgeous, famous princess. And these two, unlikely best friends, actually, are both on the same night abducted and taken to this school where they must learn to be princesses and villainesses. And things get a little bit shaken up because Agatha, the very clear villain, ends up in the school for good, and Sophie, clearly the princess, ends up in the school for evil. And thus shenanigans ensue. One of the things I really enjoy about this book series is how Chainani really goes in a very different direction. We've seen plenty of reimaginings and parodies of famous fairy tales, and honestly, they're a lot of fun to do, but by now they've just kind of become a dime a dozen. There's been so many retellings, and it's hard to find any nowadays that really stick out in a meaningful way. Chainani understands this, and so he moves on and starts telling other fairy tales that are instead inspired by the consequences of the fairy tales that you already know, and slowly begins to then pull these older fairy tales in through very imaginative means and spinning out very interesting morals that you normally would not associate with Aladdin and the Magical Lamp, or Beauty and the Beast, or the story of King Arthur. And it keeps then these fairy tales that you thought you knew suddenly very alive and fresh and just very new. That is something that I really enjoyed, is that it felt like I was revisiting for the first time a lot of fairy tales that I'm like, yeah, I already know this one. But by the end, I'm like, holy dang, I never thought of it this way. I never thought of Robin Hood and the Sheriff of Nottingham from this perspective. I never thought of King Arthur from this perspective. I never thought of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs or Peter Pan from these perspectives. It was really, really neat. That is honestly a real strength to this series. And what is also a fantastic strength to this series is the way that Chainani writes his characters. Now, I will put a little caveat right here, a little asterisk. It all, though, comes down to whether or not you like your characters to be utterly ridiculous. Every character in this series is absolutely a strange caricature. And you have to roll with that. If you are looking for very complex, very deep characters, you're not going to get that off the bat. Instead, the characters become deep because of how they play off of each other. Whereas, really, they're honestly very one note. Sophie and Agatha really being kind of the exceptions to that rule. But even then, they just do really bizarre, crazy things. Chainani has a very tongue-in-cheek way of writing just about everything within this series. So if that's not your forte, you might not really come to love these characters. But if that is something that you enjoy, you will love it. And honestly, what pushes the story through is its characters. Its characters are phenomenal, all the way from book 1 to book 6. And that's a good thing because books 2, 3, and 4 are a bit meandering. This is kind of the problem that comes with trying to reinvent fairy tales, is that you start trying to cut your own path, tread new ground, but eventually you loop back around and you end up where you were before, and now you're trying to justify revisiting it. That's one of the things that was really hard to get through part of this series, is that it felt like we continuously came back to certain scenarios or to certain places, and we really hadn't progressed. That just comes with the territory of reimagining. It's really hard to just reimagine something and strike out on your own. And many times we draw back from the well of what has been done before, and we then try to mesh it into our mold of what we envision this new story to be, and it becomes a little bit of a mess. I will admit, parts of the plot get really messy, get really convoluted. I got lost a few times. The one thing that kept me through was the characters. And let me tell you, if you're right now thinking, well, Lars, you said you really love this series, but it sounds as though the middle is kind of a mess. Why should I bother? Let me tell you, going through the convoluted mess, even if it gets confusing at times, makes the ending amazing. The very last book in the series, The One True King, is phenomenal. It was a real page turner. It was the perfect way to end the story for all these different characters, and it was the perfect way to deliver the message that Chainani has for fairy tales. That fairy tales are immortal, that they are eternal to us. The reason why we keep coming back to them is because they have stories and morals to tell us. And at first glance, they're not what you thought they were. But if you dig a little bit deeper, you will find something meaningful and beautiful in the stories of heroes and villains from these fairy tales. And that was something that really struck deep to me as a reader, as someone who loves a good fantasy story, someone who loves fairy tales. That struck a chord with me. And Chainani pulls it off by the end. Everything that he sets up, all of his plot points, all of his great arcs, all of the strange characters, all come to a meaningful conclusion by the end. And it's honestly really, really amazing. So, The School for Good and Evil definitely gets 2 thumbs up from me, despite it being a little bit of a bumpy road, because the beginning and the ending are absolutely worth it, and Agatha and Sophie are just phenomenal characters, and I love them. So, go check it out if you want to see a cool reimagining of some fairy tales, and if you're interested in other book reviews, we have plenty of those here out on the channel. We also have other videos for you to check out if you are a novice writer looking to try to hone their craft and become better. We also have plenty of reviews, theories, all different kinds of stuff. There's something for everyone here out on our channel. And if you definitely want to dive deeper into the process of writing, then head on over to our podcast, Camille's Harem, found on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, the works. And thank you for joining us on this adventure that we call writing. Links for all of our sites and supports are down in the description. We'd love to see more of you. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.